I'm Sienna Bose. Welcome to my channel, Learning Balanced Life. Today we are going to talk about variables and controls in experiments. So let's begin. You see, researchers always manipulate certain factors in experiments. And they try to observe the changes or the effects in the experiment by manipulating these factors. Now, if you can recall from my previous episode, we took the mouse camouflage experiments. Mouse camouflage experiment. And this experiment can be called as a controlled experiment. Controlled experiment. The reason I call this experiment a controlled experiment is that we can compare in between experimental groups which were the non-camouflaged mice. Non-camouflaged. And we compare these experimental groups with control groups. Control groups, which were the camouflaged mice with respect to the environment. Hence, we can call this experiment a controlled experiment. Now, moving on to variables. In variables, what are variables? They are basically factors which can be altered and varied in experiments. Variables can be varied in experiments. Before I move on to types of variables, you might take a close look at the board. Moving on to types of variables. Types of variables. First is independent variable. Independent variable. This is the independent variable is the factor which researchers are varying. And in the mouse experiment, which we were saying previously, in that experiment, the factor which researchers are varying are the coat colors. The coat colors. In this experiment, the independent variable is the coat colors or the coat coloration. Now, the next type of variable is dependent variable. Dependent variable. The dependent variable are the factors which then later on rely on the independent variable. Like over here, the independent variable is the code color. As we manipulate the code color, we can get the other variables which are based on the code coloration, like the rate of predation. In this case, the dependent variable is rate of predation on the mice. Rate of predation on the mice. And why so? Why is it the rate of predation? Since if the code colors are camouflaged, or the camouflaged mice with respect to the environment, then the rate of predation decreases. But if it is from the experimental groups, which are non-camouflaged group of mice, they have higher rate of predation. Hence, I say the rate of predation on the mice as the dependent variable. And now, in this experiment, we can rule out all other factors like number of predators or the temperature in the test areas. And we get finally the experimental design. This clever experimental design leaves us only with code coloration as the last thing which we can rely on to get finally our rest of the experiment. So that was about dependent variables and independent variables. Now, before we move on to the last part, which I am going to discuss about this topic, you may take a look at the board. One thing which I have to tell about controlled experiments. Controlled experiments about controlled experiments, it is a very common misconception that controlled experiments are like the researchers are going to control all of the features in the experimental go to control all of the features in the experimental environment. Well, this is a very common misconception. Actually, what do researchers control is that they control the unwanted variables. The unwanted variables which were the ones, like I said previously, the other factors which scientists could rule out from this mouse camouflage experiment. The unwanted variables, they control the unwanted variables by not eliminating them, but by regulating the environments, but by canceling out their effects. By canceling out their effects by control groups. And in this misconception that controlled experiments, the researchers will control all of the features in the experimental environment. This is not even possible in highly regulated laboratories as well. Now you may take a look at the board. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and please like, share, and subscribe my channel, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.